Good morning again, everyone, and welcome to Dynamics GP budgeting training. We'll also be looking a bit at budgeting in Management Reporter this morning. If you have any questions, please feel free to type in the QA section, or if you have a chat section um, during the webinar. Once I notice your question, I'll try to give you a prompt response. If not, at the end of the webinar, I'll answer all remaining questions. Okay, so first of all, quite a number of you would be aware that you do have the budgeting feature within GP. It's under the financial and cards area. And some of my clients are unaware of the budgeting feature. So some of this will be new for some of you, and for some of you it will be a reintroduction. So it's actually pretty simple. So to add a new budget in GP, and you go to cards financial budget, and from this window you can either add a budget directly in GP, or you can create a budget using an Excel wizard. So we're going to look at both, as well as some other options in terms of editing budgets, and of course later viewing those budgets in Management Reporter, where you can create variance reporting. So first of all, let's look at an existing budget that I have here in GP, and notice that there's an Excel symbol next to my BUD 2027. What that means is that this budget was created using the Excel wizard. If it was created directly in GP, we'll see the icon, we'll see no Excel icon next to the budget ID. So if I go to open, so I select the budget and I go to open using GP. Right, this is my budget displayed on the screen, and then I'll browse my GL accounts. Now I know that I would have entered figures against sales or revenue. So I'll go to my revenue account, and these are my budget amounts here. Now generally, for revenue type accounts, generally we enter with a negative in front of the number because revenue is credit. Okay, and we can browse the budget there. So that's an existing budget. So let's look at if we want to create a new budget within GP. This is not using Excel. So we go to the new drop down using Dynamics GP. Here we can create a budget ID. Right, so I already have a budget 2027 in the system, so I'm actually creating a second budget, so I will give it a slightly different naming. And by the way, you can have as many budgets as you want for any given year. So I can have multiple budgets for 2027. In case you're wondering why I'm using 2027, that is the year of my demo company. Okay, so once we have our budget ID and our description, we can go and enter or look up our GL accounts and put in our information one by one. But the budget maintenance window actually allows us to use ranges of accounts and allows methods. So let's look at the ranges of this. So here we select what range of GL accounts we want. I'm going to select my main account, and I'm going to select ranges 1100 to 1140. So I'm just selecting a small range, just for demo purpose. Of course, when you're doing this, you'll select the entire GL or all of your profit and loss accounts, because some persons don't budget for balance sheet type accounts. Okay, so my range has been selected. Nothing has changed in the window, but I assure you the range is now against this budget, which we'll confirm shortly. Then we go to methods. And we actually have several methods. So these methods are if you want the system to populate the budget for you, versus you manually inputting numbers. Of course, once the system populates the budget for you, you can go after and edit whichever GL accounts you want to the budget amounts. So if you look at the calculation method, these are some of the options that we have. We can use an open year within the system and increase or decrease by a percentage or an amount. We can use a previous budget that's in the system, a percentage change, an amount change. We can have a set amount for all GL accounts. We can use a yearly amount, which will be spread across each month, or a historical year, which means a closed year in GP, actual figures and increment, increase or decrease by a certain percentage or amount. So let's look at the open year percentage, increase on an open year percentage. Or let's look at the other budget, right? So I'm using budget 2027, that's in the system. Notice this is a new 2027 I'm doing. So I could select budget 2027, or I could have selected a year from the past, which would be 2026, right? So I'll increment by 10%. So by percentage increase, and then I select calculate. Before I select calculate, just to mention, there's a small section here called unit accounts. And for most of us, I'm sure you probably don't use unit accounts, but in case you do, unit accounts is where you would measure square footage or head count, etc. Then you could budget by unit account as well. Okay, so I'll go ahead and click calculate. All right, now that I've selected calculate, I'm going to browse my GL accounts. Remember, I use GL account number 1100 until 1140. So let's see if any figures populated. Right? Now I used budget. I use my previous budget 2027, and the question is whether this range of accounts had any figures. So I'm going to add to my range of accounts because I know for sure my revenue accounts had amounts against them. So I'm going to use my beginning revenue account 4100 to 4120. Again, I'll select budget 2027 and increment by 10%. Right? So if I browse now, this is my budget here, my new budget 2027E. If I browse to my GLs, my revenues, that begin with 4100, I should see figures pulled in from a previous budget. So here we have figures now appearing against a new budget. Okay, so this is how we create a new budget in a system. Let's look at a feature that most of you would use, which is using the budget Excel wizard, which is, as much as the new budget within GP is automated, using the budget with Excel feature is a bit more user-friendly, especially because most of you actually are custom building out your budgets in Excel. So you can simply copy your figures and paste it into this GP format. So let's look at that format and how to create that Excel budget. So we're going to create a new budget now. We're going to create budget 2028. So I'll select new, using wizard for Excel. Next, at this point we give a budget ID. And it's going to either be based on a fiscal year or a date range. Usually we budget for a year. So I'll leave fiscal year. And the budget is for the financial year 2028. Then we go next. And we have these options here just as we saw when we were creating a new budget directly in GP. We had some methods that we could use. So we can base on another budget, just as I did. Another budget that's in the system, an increment or decrease by a certain percent. We can use a past budget. We can use an open year, an increase or decrease. And what is most used is a blank budget because you want to be able to input your own figures against the budget. So we'll use a blank budget. And what this means is the format for the budget will be sent to Excel, which you will then populate and upload back into GP. All right, at this stage, we don't have to select any options. We can say next, but just to let you know what the options are. Actual amount selection actually lets you, when you send your file out to Excel with the budget, the blank budget, it actually gives you an additional sheet. So let's say, yes, I'm selecting a blank budget, but I want to be able to reference year 2026 when I'm going to input my figures. I will get an additional sheet with actual figures from 2026. And as I said, this step is optional. Okay, then we have what type of accounts we want to use. Do we want to use balance sheet, P&L, or both? I'll select profit and loss accounts. Right, and here I'll select my range of accounts, my main account. As I said, in most instances, you'll select all accounts, right? Just to move the process a little quicker, I'm using a range of accounts. So again, I'm going to look for my revenue accounts. And they begin with the 4,000s. So I'll select 4,100 to 4,120. Okay, so this is my range of accounts, and at this stage, I could uncheck accounts. I could add new accounts using the add account button if I wanted to. Right, remember we are creating a new budget, so it's not an existing workbook. It will be a new workbook. Next. Here's a summary of the information we selected, and then we click finish. All right, at this point, we select what location we want to save the budget to and the name. So I'm going to save it to my desktop. And give a name. At this stage, the accounts will start extracting from GP and building that Excel report. As you can see now, displayed in the budget selection window is budget 2028, which is the budget, the blank budget that I just created. Okay, and at this stage, either the blank budget launches on your screen or you browse to your location and you select the budget to begin populating. Okay, I seem to got an error. Let me see if the sheet is opening or if I have to recreate the process. Okay, so my sheet is here. So here is my blank budget for 2028, which I will go to the different cells and populate. Now, every time you export a blank budget out of GP, it's going to take on a similar format to this. The format is not going to change. What is going to change is the date range, which is the start and end date. And what is going to change is the list of GL accounts that you would have selected. So for instance, if I were to select this range of GL accounts, or all of my GL accounts and export out for budget, and then before I import that budget back into GP, I created some new GLs that are not captured on the Excel sheet, I may receive an error when I'm loading that information back into GP. So there should not be a large time frame between the time you export the blank budget out and the time you import. It can be a few days, that is fine. But if there are changes to the GL during that time, you may receive errors when you import in because the GLs on your budget sheet should match the GLs within your ranges in GP. Okay, so we have the account number, we have the description, we have beginning balance, which you don't have to populate, right? Most people leave this as zeros. And then you have the 12 months of the year or the fiscal year and your total. Okay, so you have totals to the side and totals below. Remember when we were creating this blank budget, I selected that I want 2026 actuals. And these are my 2026 actuals in case I want to reference any of this when I'm populating my budget. So I'll go ahead and populate some of my information. So some of my revenue account. Now, because they're revenue, I'm putting a negative in front. Okay, so I just put a bit of information here. And notice my totals are updated. So I'll save this. As I mentioned, you may already have a budget that you work with in Excel, and you can simply copy those amounts and paste it here into the GP format. Okay, so back to GP. So let's see if those figures well, first I have to import the budget back into GP, and then we'll be able to confirm if those figures that I input in budget 2028 in Excel, if they have imported into GP. So we select our budget. We select import from Excel, and this is the existing budget, the budget that we just sent out as a blank budget. Go next. At this stage, it's an existing budget ID. As much as it's a new budget, it has been created in GP. So we're going to look for budget 2028. And we browse for a file. Okay, and just a reminder that we only took the 2026 sheet out for reference. So what we want to upload is just the budget 2028 sheet. So we just select that sheet and next and finish. There's NW colon. Okay, so let's go to open the budget. And let's view one of those GL accounts. Okay, and these are the figures that I input. So I had just input figures to 2 GL accounts, and these are the 2 here. So we see our budget figures in GP. And let's say you wanted to edit these figures after they came in. Nothing prevents you from editing those figures because it's just a budget. It's not actually GL transactions. So that same window that we were in where we went and open using GP, we can edit the budget figures here. but it may be tedious if we have a lot of GL accounts. So another way we can edit the budget is we select the budget ID. We open using Excel. So even though we already uploaded our budget, we can make changes and re-upload that budget. So let's see. So I'm going to make some changes. All right, so once I save this, I can re-upload. So click on a budget, Excel, import from Excel. And we go through our steps again. Yes, it's an existing budget. We browse for our file. Okay, so let's confirm in GP. Right, so the third GL that I entered to is here, as well as the changes that I just made. Okay, so as I mentioned, what is most used in GP in terms of the budgeting feature would be using an Excel wizard, exporting a blank budget to Excel and populating it, importing it back into GP. However, there are multiple methods in GP for updating your budget. So another feature we're going to look at is single account budget maintenance. So if you go to the GL account, to any GL account under Cards Financial and Account, you may have noticed before there's a there's a budget button to the bottom of your screen. If I go to this button, I can actually create budget information on a per GL account basis if you choose to do so. So I'm going to select an existing budget, budget 2027. Right, and in budget 2027, I'm seeing that there are no figures for this GL account, the cash account, and I'm going to input some figures, or I can use an open year percent. So let's say I use 2026 and I increment by 15%. Right, and I click calculate. And here are my figures now, which would be our 2026 actual figures incremented by 15%. And once I save, this amount for these amounts for this GL account has been updated to budget 2027. So that is called single account budget maintenance, which, as you can appreciate, may be tedious if you're doing an entire budget this way. However, if you have small changes to make to a few GL accounts, this is a good way to get it done. All right, so let's go back to our main budgets window under Cards Financial and Budget. And there's also the combined feature. So for instance, I'm sure most organizations would have departmental budgets. So what that means, various departments would submit their budgets. The combined budget feature allows those department heads to actually input or upload their budgets in GP, and then for someone who is more of a finance administrator to combine those budgets. So you'll have what you call a master budget, and then you have the divisional or the department budgets, which you could combine against the master budget. So for instance, I have budget 2027 and I also have budget 2027A. Let's just look at both of those and look at how we can combine it. Right, so budget 2027A, I believe I would have the revenue accounts populated. Right, so I have some of the revenue accounts populated here. My main account, 2200, 2200 per month. Okay, and then let's look at budget 2027. And budget 2027, excuse me, budget 2027, I have 2000 per month for some of the periods. So let's look at how we can combine these two budgets. So to the top of the budget maintenance screen, you'll see a combine budgets button. Okay, and my master budget ID is BUD 2027. And I'm going to combine that additional budget that I have in the system, budget 2027A. Okay, we have the option to delete a budget after it's combined, or we can leave that budget. So I could have selected, okay, once 2027A is combined with the main budget, that it's deleted from the system. I'm going to leave it for now. Process. Right. Okay, and as you can see, my figures have increased. On one budget, I had a figure of 2200 per month. On another budget, I had a figure of 2000 per month. Now those figures have been combined, and they have combined for the entire budget. Now let's look at what is a relatively new feature in GP. It's not brand new. It was released probably 2 versions ago. But for those of you on older versions of GP, you may not have this feature. It's called budget transactions. So we look at how we can edit a budget. We can edit via single account maintenance. We can edit via updating our Excel sheet and re-uploading. But all of those methods of editing do not allow an audit trail. So budget transactions allow for you to have an audit trail within GP. So when you're editing budgets, your mode of edit could be budget transactions. So you see what changes were made. Whereas with the rest of methods, whatever change was made, there's no trail of it in terms of what was original and what is the revised amount. So budget and transactions are under financial and transactions area and budget transaction. So we're going to update account 4110 on budget 2028. All right. So currently we have a current budget amount column and we have an adjustment column. So currently, as you can see, 4110 for budget 2028 has $5,400. The adjustment is going to be, we're going to add to that 2,000. Okay, and I can save this to a batch and post later, or I can post immediately. By the way, if you want to make a change using calculation methods, which we spoke about earlier, you can do that as well. Right? So a change has been made to budget 2028. So let's view budget 2028. By the way, your journal will print once you post, showing the original and showing the change. So let's go back to budget 2028. Open in GP. Let's look at our GL account. And we see now our amount has moved from 5,400 to 7,400 based on the adjustment that we just posted. Okay, and if we were to go to the inquiry area in GP, we should be able to see that budget entry that was made. Okay, so this is our budget entry, was entry number 2. And we see the GL account and we see what was the original amount and the adjusted amount. Now, if you want to look at budget versus actual figures, you can do so within GP under the inquiry menu. Okay, so this is my 2027 budget for my sales account. And here we have the actual figures in the first column, your budget figure. In the next column, your variance in amount and your variance in percentage. Within this view, you can only view one GL account at a time. However, once we go to Management Reporter, based on whatever your management reports are, and your format and your GL accounts, you'll be able to view your budget in a bigger view than just one GL account at a time. So let's look at Management Reporter. Okay, so I'm going to use the income statement default report. We're going to use period 4, 2027. And to achieve having our budget in, in Management Reporter, the area where we need to set that budget is the column area. So let's go to the shortcut to column. And here, currently what we can see is we have an actual column showing year to date, another actual column showing last year's year to date, and a variance between the two. Now we want to include our budget amounts. And since the other columns are year to date, we'll create these as year to date as well. So FD means amounts from your GL. And this can either be this can either be actual or budget amounts. So I'll double click and I'll look for my budget 2027. Okay, and remember we want year-to-date figures, so I'll change periodic to YTD. Above that, I'll just type in budget. And then we want budget minus actual or actual minus budget. Right? And that is going to be a calculated column because anytime we're talking about a variance, it's one actual column versus another or one actual versus budget. And we express this as a calculation. So let's say budget minus actual. So we want E minus B. And I'll just bold it. Okay, so now we have our budget 2027, and now we have in just 2 minutes or less, we have our budget and we have our comparison or variance budget minus actual. So I'll save this report and we'll generate the column. Sorry, I'll save and generate. Okay, so the report is loading. Good. So here is our report with the 2 columns that we just added, right? So the last 2 columns, so the 2 columns to the right, we have our budget and we have our budget versus actual or variance column. Okay, so any existing report that you have, you can, once you have added your budget in GP, you can easily add to your management report or reports, right? You can add it to a trial balance, or income statement, even a balance sheet. Okay, so that concludes what I intended to cover this morning in terms of budgeted. And I am holding on in case you all have any questions. I didn't see any questions pop up as yet. So I'm holding on in case you all have any questions for a few minutes, or if there's anything you wanted me to go over. Okay, and while I'm holding on, just to mention that outside of what I've shown you this morning, which would be the standard budgeting figures within GP and Management Reporter, there is a very useful budgeting feature that's called encumbrance management that exists within GP. And encumbrance management works with your purchase requisition if you use requisition, and it works with purchase orders, either or. And basically, when a purchase or requisition is being entered in the system, GP will look to the budget to see if the budget is going to be exceeded, and the user will be prompted on screen on the amount you're going to be exceeded by, and that entry is going to have to go for approval by an administrator or someone before that entry could proceed further in the system, and that is called encumbrance management. So in case you need to find out more about encumbrance, you want a demo on encumbrance, you want assistance with setting up your GP budgets, please feel free to reach out to us at operations@optimus.guru. operations@optimus.guru. So I haven't seen any questions, so I have to assume that we have satisfied attendees. And if you all have any follow-up questions, don't hesitate to send them to me, or as I said, to our operations email as well. Thanks everyone for joining this morning, and do enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.